Shell says, which guest was the most fascinating person you ever met through Mythbusters? So the big category of people that I met through doing Mythbusters, it's a large and long list. And it's an astonishing list. I got to meet the President of the United States, President Obama. I got to have dinner next to Don Herbert, the original Mr. Wizard. The opportunities that Mythbusters afforded are insane and impossible and amazing. But I'm going to go with the very first answer I had to this, which is one of the very first guests we ever brought on the show, which is magician Ricky Jay. If you don't know Ricky Jay, you're welcome, because you want me to go cut that? Yeah, I'm just going to cut that. Sorry, that's my compressor, and it's just an annoying sound. I have to replumb it so it stops leaking and stops kicking off every 30 minutes. Anyway, in the very first season of Mythbusters, we were shooting the breeze about stories we could do, and it turned out that I demonstrated that I could throw playing cards really fast. And then we were talking about throwing playing cards, and I said, I have seen Ricky Jay throw playing cards and slice bananas and knock cigarettes out of people's mouths and even embed them through the skin of a watermelon from 20 paces. And this is true. In 1984, no, earlier than that. It's going to be like 1982. The International Jugglers Convention took place at SUNY Purchase, New York, College of SUNY Purchase in New York. And my friend Tim Podell and I went to the Jugglers Convention. And that moment of walking into a gymnasium full of people juggling shifted me on axis as a young person. I had been juggling alone in my room. I'd been teaching myself how to ride a unicycle, but I had never met another juggler or another circus performer except for Tim Podell. And Tim Podell I knew because I was working at the local public access station, and Tim Podell had a little show on public access called This World of Mime, where a mime did tricks, and we made fun things happen between the Chiron and the Sony editor and the mime. It was just as terrible and wonderful as you could imagine it might be. But we went to the International Jugglers Convention, and the headliner was Ricky Jay. And it was beautiful to watch him go. And so he's throwing playing cards. And as soon as we started talking about playing cards, I said, Ricky Jay has this book called Cards as Weapons. And that's when we were like, we got to do Kill a Playing Card of Death. We got to do, can you kill someone with a playing card? And then that begged the question of, could we get Ricky Jay on this episode? Again, this is like the first season. The episodes have only been airing for a few weeks. We've only been filming for a few months. But I managed to, I can't even remember how it worked out, but one of our producers knew like Ricky Jay's producer. And so I called them up and I got Ricky on the phone, and Ricky agreed to come on the show. So just to give you a little bit of background on Ricky Jay, in American Magic, there's this really important moment from what I understand from my friends who are magicians. And if you are a magician who understands American magic history or the international magic history, I'm sorry if I'm butchering part of the story. But within American magic, what I understand is that there's a sea change that happens in the mid-century when a magician named Di Vernon starts to learn, do, and teach card magic to other magicians based not on a very florid magical style of I am the expert and impossible things appear from my hands, but more from the idea from a card sheet. I am an average human and I'm not doing anything remarkable, and yet remarkable things happen from my hands. Those are two very different frames. And they both have their place. But the naturalistic style of magic was, from what I understand, Di Vernon's big contribution in the mid-century. And a whole, but like Ricky Jay apparently moved to Los Angeles as a young magician in order to meet and work with who everyone called the professor, Di Vernon. And Ricky Jay was an amazing amazing magician, but also a polymath on all sorts of different fronts. He collected old movie posters. I first became aware of him when I was like 13 because someone got me one of his books for Christmas. This book was called Learned Pigs and Fireproof Women, and it was a history of the circus sideshow. And I want to tell you about, sorry, I'm bouncing all over the place here, but the book he wrote, Cards as Weapons, is very rare. It's very hard to get. It's very expensive. I have a copy of it in my collection. The most hilarious thing about it is it teaches you exactly how to throw cards as weapons, but all of the pictures showing you how to hold cards and how to do them, all the pictures are topless women, which is, it's so weird. And I mean, obviously, for me as a young kid, I was like, "What is going on? This is awesome!" And when when Ricky came on the show, I asked him, I was like, "How did that come about?" And he said, "I simply told the publisher I wanted all the pictures of card handling techniques to be topless women, and they said okay." So, like, this is all a way of saying Ricky Jay is somebody who carves their own path through the universe. Absolutely, as Hunter Thompson would have said, one of God's own prototypes. And it was like fantasy camp for me to bring this hero of mine onto MythBusters to throw playing cards with me. But this is also the very first time we brought a celebrity guest to the show, and my producer didn't want to deal with it. So my producer at the time was like, "This is your sequence. You go produce it." And the thing that had happened was that Ricky Jay's back wasn't in great shape when he came onto our show. So throwing cards was actually hard for him. And it was what we had brought him on to do. So if you watch the episode, Ricky looks great. That's because that's where I learned how to produce a segment to get the result I wanted, even though things weren't as easy as I would love them to have been back behind the scenes. Not to say Ricky was difficult. He was fantastic. But again, we were thinking we'd bring him on to be this sort of the perfect test of like the hardest throw. And that wasn't what he could generate. So we rejiggered the sequence. So he came on more as the expert, the consultant, and then he and I had a showdown with playing cards. And we got to have this showdown where I was like, our faces were up against each other. And I was like, "You ready?" And he was like, "Let's do this." And I want to tell you, that's also the first time I looked into the eyes of a real actor and saw them acting opposite me. And it was chilling and intense because real acting is terrifying and amazing. And when you watch people actually do it in front of you, it's total magic as far as I'm concerned. I have so much respect. So Ricky Jay is without a doubt the most fascinating person we had on the show. And through Ricky brought, so one of the things also that Ricky Jay did was he consulted for Hollywood. He had a company called Deceptive Practices. I think their tagline was arcane knowledge on a need-to-know basis. So Ricky and his partner, Michael Weber, who then became one of my very great friends, they designed the chair that Gary Sinise sits in Forrest Gump that hid his legs. Yes, you heard that his legs were disappeared with CG, but for most of the shots, they weren't. For most of the shots, his wheelchair was a practical effect. Yeah. They did a lot of that for Zemeckis. Zemeckis loved Ricky and Michael. And they did that for a lot of other shows, a lot of other movies, consulting for magic and stuff like that. And through Ricky, I met Michael Weber, who had become the director of my stage show with Michael Stevens from Vsauce. I knew that I wanted a science show that had magic in it, and that's why I brought Michael Weber in. He's one of the great magic designers and writers. He's a wonderful director. I learned so much from him. And through Michael Weber, from Ricky Jay to Michael Weber, I met other people who would become among my favorite humans in the world, people like Eric Mead and Derek Del Gaudio. So aside from being one of my heroes to come on the show, the ball that got rolling from that appearance of Ricky Jay changed my whole life. Yeah, through that, I met Penn and Teller and all the other magicians I've met and gotten to spend time with. And I've gotten to spend so many evenings around tables, seeing impossible things happen right in front of me. I'm so grateful for that. There we go. 13 minutes for my first answer. Thomas Essen, the very second question on my list is another banger to answer. You consulted and interacted with a wide variety of experts over the course of the show. Was there one who, despite their incredible accomplishments or talents, blew you away with how humble they were? Thomas, this is such a specific question. I find myself wondering if you already know my answer to it. because unequivocally, it is senior crime scene analyst Alec Jason. Alec Jason consulted with us on a bunch of ballistic myths. The most famous one he worked on was one in which we were finding out if you were in a car chasing someone, could you skip a bullet off the ground and up under their car to harm them? Which, as you can imagine, was a difficult experimental setup to get right. And Alec Jason was our ballistics expert and our safety guy on there. He has an incredible history. As a senior crime scene analyst, he also did a lot of work with my old friend James Randi from the, and James, so there's this amazing thing that happens back in the mid-'80s where a evangelical preacher named Peter George Popoff has a huge church where he regularly brings seemingly random people up from the audience and tells them their birthday and tells them what illnesses they might have, and it seems like it's totally psychic. And he's saying, this is all from God. I glean all this knowledge from God. So James Randi goes to one of Popoff's sermons with Alec Jason, and Alec Jason is there to see if he can find a radio signal. Randy thinks that George has an in-ear radio and he's getting information from someone off-site. So Alec Jason is apparently walking through what he puts on what looks like a lineman's set, right? Like a phone, like a belt, big belt, tool belt. He's wearing coveralls. He's wearing a hard hat, and he just walks in the front of the venue. And he's walking around, and now he's walking with George Popoff and his team, and he's also walking with the security of the venue. And both think that he's with the other. He's kind of blending in perfectly. It's like that bit from Tenet where they say, with a clipboard and a high-vis vest, you can get anywhere. This was Alec Jason's way of getting into the venue with his radio equipment. And he starts tuning and trying to find a signal, and he does. He finds a signal of Popoff's wife. Hello, honey. She's settling into her station. She's like, okay, now 3 seats over from third row. You can hear her all. And James Randi and Alec Jason record all of this. They record her telling Popoff, the preacher, where to find the person, what their birth date is, or what illness they might have, or what wish they might have. It's all theater. So to me, that places Alec Jason in a very rarefied atmosphere, right? The buster of the charlatan, the expert. And when we were filming that myth about skipping bullets off the pavement into another car, there was this point at which he and I are collating our data, and we're figuring out, and we're like, and whenever you're collating data, one of the things that'll happen is you figure out some new piece of data you want. And we're doing that, and we're doing that, and we're doing that. And Alex says to me, the only difference between science and screwing around is writing it down. And I was like, wait, what? Is that you? Did you just come up with that? He was like, yeah. And I said, okay, Alec, do you mind if I say that on camera? And he was like, no problem. And I was like, okay, I'm telling you, when I say it on camera, it's going to become a thing. It's a great phrase, and it's going to become a thing. And it's so funny, if you're familiar with the film Jerry Maguire, there's this great moment when Cuba Gooding Jr. calls up Tom Cruise and starts yelling, "Show me the money." And "Show me the money" became a cultural meme for years. And you can tell when Cameron Crowe was writing that script that when he got to "Show me the money," he knew it was a thing. He knew it and he leaned into it. And I remember watching that movie being like, how did he know? And then this opportunity presented itself to me, and I thought, oh, that's how he knew. You have your expertise, your cultural slice, you realize that someone gives you something, and yes, this will take flight. So the phrase, "the only difference between science and screwing around is writing it down," comes from Alec Jason. He's still around, still doing his stuff, still brilliant. I'm a huge admirer, and without a doubt, one of the most humble technicians, craftspeople, thinkers that I have ever met. Yeah. I love telling both of those stories.
Thank you for watching that video. Are you as sick of the tosses to membership as I am? Good, because here's a brand new one that I recorded today, and it's nice and short. There are 3 tiers to Tested membership, and they all offer awesome stuff. Find out about it by clicking the join link below. We'll see you there.